Can I share this table? A boy in a wheelchair asks the city's most feared crime lord. That simple question triggers a shocking test of wills and mind. Now, the boy must judge ruthless men, outthink a corporate predator, and confront a painful secret that ties him to the very kingpin who holds his fate. If you're new here, subscribe and comment your location. Now let's begin. The air in the diner was thick enough to slice with a knife, not with the smell of grease and coffee, but with the sharp, metallic scent of impending violence. Judge sat in his usual booth, the cracked red vinyl seat his throne. On one side of the aisle, Victor's crew, Russian, cold-eyed, fingers tapping impatiently on the formica. On the other, the Dyer's brothers, all heat and simmering Latin fury. A disputed shipment, a missing bag of product worth more than the diner. Words had been exchanged. Now it was time for the verdict. Judge listened, his face a granite mask. His enforcer, a mountain of silent menace named Mark, stood by the jukebox, his arms crossed, watching everyone and no one. A waitress named Lucy moved like a ghost, refilling Judge's coffee with a trembling hand, avoiding all eye contact. "He says 60 keys, growled Ivan, Victor's lieutenant. "We counted 59 on the dock. One is missing. That is a Dyer's problem." "Your scales are old, pendejo," Raphael Dyers shot back, leaning forward. "Or your count is bad. The product was whole. Maybe your own people have sticky fingers." Judge raised a single finger. The sound ceased. His voice was low, a dry rustle of leaves. "You bring me a math problem. I am not an accountant. You bring me a trust problem that I can solve. The missing keys value comes from the Dyer's side. You will pay Victor 70% of its street value, a tax for sloppiness." Raphael's face darkened, but a sharp look from his older brother, Matteo, silenced him. Matteo gave a stiff nod. "As you say, Judge." It was done, the law had been laid down. The tension should have broken, but it simply twisted, coiling tighter, waiting for the next spark. The diner door chimed. Every head turned. No one walked into Judge's diner during a sit-down. It was suicide. The city knew it. But the figure in the doorway wasn't walking. Misha propelled his wheelchair through the entrance, the soft whir of its motor a bizarre counterpoint to the silence. He was 17, with eyes too old for his face and hands that gripped the joystick controller with a careful precision. He scanned the room, not with fear, but with a weary resolve. He saw the gangs, the danger, and he saw Judge. He rolled forward. A Dyer's foot soldier, a young hothead named Carlos, moved to block the path. "Get lost, kid. This isn't a place for you." Misha didn't even look at him. His gaze was fixed on the man in the booth. His voice, when it came, was clear and steady, cutting through the quiet. "Excuse me," Misha said. "Can I share this table?" A beat of stunned disbelief. Then a few muffled snorts from Victor's side. Raphael Dyers smirked. This was a joke, a pathetic, suicidal joke. Judge did not smile. He studied the boy. The dark, intelligent eyes, the set of the jaw, the way he held himself in the chair, not slumped in defeat but poised. And then, with a cold shock that traveled down his spine like a trickle of ice water, he saw it. The curve of the brow, the shape of the lips. He saw the ghost of Leonid Volkov, the Red Wolf, the man Judge had put in the ground 10 years ago in a warehouse over by the docks. A clean shot, a necessary power shift. Volkov's wife had fled the city after, disappeared. Judge had heard there was a son, sickly, a non-entity. This was no non-entity. Mark took a step forward, his intention clear. Remove the obstacle. Judge raised his hand, not a dramatic gesture, just the lift of 2 fingers. Mark froze. The entire diner watched, breath held, as Judge's cold eyes appraised Misha. The boy didn't flinch. That took guts or desperation. Judge leaned back, the vinyl creaking. He reached out, gripped the back of the empty chair opposite him, the petitioner's chair, and pulled it out from the table with a scrape that echoed. "Sit," Judge said, his voice devoid of all emotion. Misha maneuvered his chair to the side of the booth, locked the wheels, and with a practiced, difficult motion, transferred himself from the wheelchair into the offered seat. It was a struggle, but he did it without asking for help, his muscles straining. He finally settled, facing Judge, the massive table between them. Judge then turned his head, his gaze sweeping over the 2 crews who were now utterly confused. Your dispute, he announced, his tone leaving no room for argument, is now his to settle. He pointed a blunt finger at Misha. He speaks with my voice. He turned his back on all of them, lifting his coffee cup and taking a slow, deliberate sip, staring out the window at the rainy street. The silence was absolute, then chaotic. Disbelieving whispers erupted. "Que Raphael Diaz spat." "This is an insult," Ivan muttered, his hand drifting toward his waistband. Mark took another step, his presence now a clear warning. The whispers died. Misha sat, paralyzed. He looked from Judge's impassive profile to the faces of the hardened criminals staring at him, their confusion rapidly turning to anger. He had come here for something else entirely, a different kind of ask. This was a trap, a cruel joke. "Well," Mateo Diaz said, his voice dangerously calm, "the Jefe here says you speak, so speak. Do we pay the tax?" Misha's mind, always his greatest asset, raced. He was a strategist, a chess player, a devourer of information. He knew who these men were. He read the streets like others read magazines. This was a test, a terrifying, impossible test, and the man who killed his father had just handed him the gavel. He swallowed, his throat dry. "Explain the problem again," Misha said, his voice only wavering slightly. "From the beginning, the shipment, the count, everything." Ivan scoffed, but with a sharp look from Mark, began again. 60 bricks promised, 59 delivered at the transfer point. The dock was Diaz controlled. The loss is theirs. "Our men were there, your men were there," Misha said, thinking aloud. "A joint handoff. What was the security?" "Standard," Raphael said dismissively. 2 men each. Lights, no leaks." "A busy dock?" Misha asked. "Night shift, quiet." "Containers," Misha pressed. "What does it matter?" Ivan snapped. "It matters," Misha said, a spark of his intellect overriding his fear. "If the product was in a container, was it sealed? Who opened it? If it was on a pallet, was it wrapped? Where did you count it? On the forklift? On the ground?" The questions were precise, procedural, not the questions of a street thug, but of a forensic mind. The gangsters were taken aback. Mateo Diaz leaned in, intrigued despite himself. "It was on a pallet, wrapped in black plastic. We cut it open together on the dock, under the lamp." "And the counting, fast, in the open?" Misha's eyes were sharp. Ivan shifted. "It was cold, we wanted to be quick." "So," Misha said, piecing it together like a puzzle, 4 men total, 2 from each side. In the cold at night, wanting to be quick. You're counting bricks of high-value product out in the open on a dock, even a quiet one." He looked at Judge, but the man was still a statue. He looked back at the crews. "You're all assuming theft. What about a mistake?" "A mistake?" Raphael laughed humorlessly. "You're counting by hand, in the dark, in a hurry," Misha said, his confidence growing. "You're nervous. 1 brick is set aside, maybe knocked behind the pallet, maybe left in the wrapping when it's tossed. It's not a conspiracy. It's human error." "That is a very convenient error," Ivan sneered. "So is assuming your allies are thieves when a simpler explanation exists," Misha fired back. He took a breath. "The solution isn't a tax. The solution is to go back, right now, all 4 men who were there, with lights, and search that exact spot, the dumpster nearby, everything within 20 feet. Judge, still looking out the window, spoke without turning. "You heard him." It wasn't a suggestion, it was an order. Ivan and Mateo stared at each other. This was absurd, but Judge's word was law. With a final, hateful glance at Misha, they stood, barking orders at their subordinates. Within minutes, the diner emptied of all but Judge, Misha, and Mark, who resumed his post by the jukebox, his expression unreadable. The silence returned, now intimate and suffocating. The rain traced paths down the window. Judge finally turned back. He looked at Misha, really looked at him. "You have your mother's eyes," he said quietly, "but your father's mind. He was a brilliant man, a vicious one, but brilliant." Misha felt a chill that had nothing to do with the diner's air conditioning. "You knew him." "I ended him," Judge corrected, his tone matter of fact. "It was business. He would have done the same to me." He sipped his coffee. "Why are you here, Misha Volkov?" And do not lie to me, you didn't come for a cheese omelette. Misha's composure cracked a little. The use of his real name, the name he hadn't heard in years, was a blow. My mother is sick. Elena, she needs a specialized treatment. It's very expensive. I have no one else to ask. And you came to me, Judge's eyebrow lifted a millimeter, the man who orphaned you. You're the only one with the resources. And, Misha met his gaze, you're the only one who might do it out of guilt. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Judge's lips. It wasn't warm. Guilt is a currency I don't deal in, but potential that has value. He set his cup down. You just mediated a dispute between two of the most volatile crews in the city. You used logic, not force. You found a third path I did not consider. That has my attention. It was just common sense, Misha muttered. In this world, common sense is the rarest commodity of all, Judge said. He leaned forward. Your verdict may have been wrong. The brick may have been stolen. They may kill each other at the dock. But you gave a verdict. You took the weight. That is the job. What job? Misha asked, dread and a strange, unwanted excitement warring in his chest. Before Judge could answer, the door chimed again. Lucy, the waitress, hurried over, looking pale. Sir, a call. On the kitchen line. It's about the dock. Judge nodded. He looked at Misha. Come with me. In the diner's hot, cramped kitchen, the phone receiver lay off the hook. Judge put it on speaker. A panicked voice came through, echoing slightly. Boss, it's Paul from Dyer's crew. We found it. The brick. It was exactly like the kid said. Stuck between the pallet and the dock railing, wrapped in a torn bit of plastic. It must have got kicked. Judge looked at Misha. The boy's theory had been right. And the men? Judge asked. A little shamefaced. Handshakes all around. Victor's guys are leaving. Crisis averted. Good. Judge hung up. He looked down at Misha, who was breathing a little faster, the reality of what had just happened settling in. He had been right. He had stopped a war. Common sense, Judge repeated. You see, you have a gift. The city is a complex machine, Misha. Gears grinding, springs snapping. I am the mechanic. I apply force. I replace parts. Sometimes I have to break things to make them work again. But you saw a misaligned gear. You suggested simply nudging it back into place. What are you saying? Misha whispered. I'm saying your mother gets her treatment, the best, no debt, but you will come and work for me, not as an errand boy, as an apprentice. You will sit in that booth. You will listen to disputes, and you will learn to judge. It was an unbelievable offer, a monstrous offer. It was the world that had killed his father, reaching out to pull him in, but it was also a lifeline for his mother, and a terrifying, thrilling challenge for a mind that craved puzzles. Why? Misha breathed. Because you feel responsible. No, Judge said, his voice low and final. Because the machine needs a new kind of mechanic, and you just proved you might be it. The next few days were a whirlwind. Elena Volkov was moved to a private clinic, her treatment arranged with terrifying efficiency by a woman named Jennifer, Judge's impeccably dressed and ruthlessly competent fixer. Misha visited her, told her a sanitized story about a scholarship and a mentor program for gifted students. The fear in her eyes told him she didn't believe it, but the relief at getting care overpowered it. And Misha began his education. He was given a small, secure apartment near the diner. His first day on the job, Judge had him sit in the booth during a minor dispute, a bartender skimming from a protection racket. Misha listened, asked a few questions about inventory and pouring habits, and suggested a transparent tally system rather than breaking the bartender's knees. Judge had nodded, decreed it so. It was strange, surreal. Mark, the massive enforcer, became a silent, looming shadow. He was initially cold, distrustful of the kid, the son of a rival, but Misha noticed things. He noticed Mark's knee bothered him when it was damp, an old injury. He mentioned, offhand, a physiotherapist his mother had seen. A week later, Mark grunted a thanks. The therapist had helped. The light-hearted moments came in unexpected flashes. Misha, trying to navigate the diner's narrow aisles in his chair, would get stuck. Lucy, the waitress, started leaving a wider path. One afternoon, Misha was studying a complex ledger of shipping manifests for Judge when David, one of the younger, more hot-headed enforcers, tried to explain a point by drawing on a napkin, making a mess. Misha deadpanned, Your handwriting is almost as criminal as your arithmetic." David stared, then burst out laughing, clapping Misha on the shoulder, a gesture that startled them both. The charged chemistry, the 18+ but YouTube-safe tension, hummed between Misha and a different force entirely: power, the seductive, terrifying allure of it. Watching Judge command a room with a whisper, seeing Jennifer make a corrupt city official wilt with a single phone call. Misha felt it, a dark current that was both repulsive and magnetic. And there was a different, more human charge with Stella, Jennifer's sharp-witted assistant, who brought him files and never talked down to him, her smiles genuine and secret. Weeks passed. Misha's judgments became more confident. He solved a territory dispute between two pimp crews by analyzing their revenue streams and suggesting a shared, neutral zone that increased profits for both. He uncovered an embezzler in a gambling ring by spotting a pattern in the digital books that even Judge's accountant had missed. Judge watched, a silent mentor he rarely praised. A grunt of approval was a triumph. Misha began to understand the empire not as mindless brutality, but as a brutal ecosystem with its own ruthless logic. Judge didn't give up his empire, he was grooming a new tool to maintain it. The real test came on a Tuesday. The dispute was not between underlings, but between two of Judge's own top lieutenants, James, who ran the ports, and Daniel, who controlled the downtown clubs. The issue was a woman, not a romantic entanglement, but a singer named Mercy. James had discovered her singing in a portside dive, invested in her, and she was now a rising star, booked into Daniel's most prestigious venue. Daniel claimed her contract gave him exclusive rights. James said Daniel was stealing his asset. It was personal, emotional, and therefore dangerously volatile. The diner was cleared. Only Judge, Misha, Mark, and the two furious men remained. "She is mine, Judge," James said, his voice tight. "I pulled her out of the gutter. I own her contract." "You own a piece of paper," Daniel countered, slick and calm. "My club made her, the exposure, the crowd. She fulfills her obligations at your rat hole, then she's mine." That was the spirit. "The spirit," James laughed bitterly. "We're not discussing philosophy, Danny. We're discussing what's on the page." They argued, their voices rising. Old resentment surfaced, a loan never properly repaid, a perceived slight from years ago. Judge listened, then turned to Misha. "Well." Misha felt the weight. This was internal. This was family. A wrong verdict could shatter the organization's core. He looked at the two men, both loyal, both vital. He asked to see the contract. It was, as expected, ambiguously worded, deliberately so, probably. "Where is Mercy now?" Misha asked. "In my green room," Daniel said. "Get her," Misha said. The men looked at Judge, who nodded. Mark went to fetch her. Mercy walked in, and the air changed. She was stunning, with a presence that filled the room, but her eyes were tired, scared. She looked from James to Daniel, then to the imposing Judge, finally landing on Misha in his wheelchair. Confusion flickered there. "Mercy," Misha said, his tone gentle, neutral. "These men are arguing over you, your contract, your future. What do you want?" The question seemed to shock everyone, especially Mercy. No one had ever asked her. She was an asset, a commodity. I want to sing," she said, her voice melodic even when trembling, "at the big club, but James believed in me first. I don't want to betray him." Misha saw it, the human element, the key. He looked at James and Daniel. "You're both right, and you're both wrong. James, you have the paper, but you're treating her like cargo. Daniel, you have the stage, but you're trying to cut out the man who took the initial risk." He paused. "Merge." "What?" both men said in unison. "Form a partnership, a new entity. James's management, Daniel's venue. You split the costs, the profits, and the responsibility for her career 50-50. You draft a new contract together with clear terms, and you give Mercy a percentage point, a real stake. Her success becomes your shared success, not a bone to fight over." The idea hung in the air. It was radical. It was fair. James and Daniel stared at each other, the anger fading into calculation. It made business sense. It solved the immediate problem and prevented future ones. It also, subtly, bound them closer together, strengthening Judge's empire. Judge's lips twitched. He looked at Misha, and for the first time, Misha saw something akin to pride in the old man's eyes. "Do it," Judge commanded. As they left, Mercy lingered for a second, her grateful eyes meeting Misha's. "Thank you," she mouthed. It was a charged moment, full of unspoken potential, a connection forged in the crucible of power. Later, in the back office of the diner, Judge spoke. "You didn't just solve a dispute today, you strengthened the structure. You turned a weakness into a strength, that is leadership." "It was just the logical solution," Misha said, though his heart swelled. "It was diplomacy," Judge corrected. "The rarest weapon of all." He paused. "Your father would have had them duel for her, or killed them both and taken her for himself. You are not your father, Misha. That is your greatest strength." The words were a benediction and a burden. Misha was being remade in this world, but not in its old, brutal image. He was becoming something new, a judge who sought solutions, not just verdicts. The apprentice was becoming a power in his own right, and the underworld was beginning to whisper about the boy in the chair who spoke with the voice of the king. And somewhere, deep in the city, the enemies of Judge's empire began to take note. The machine had a new, unpredictable gear, and some would seek to use it, while others would seek to break it. The whispers about the Judge's brain, or less kindly, the gimp in the booth, spread through the city's underbelly like a new strain of virus. Misha's solutions were unorthodox, often leaving all parties vaguely dissatisfied, yet unable to argue with the improved efficiency or increased profit. It was unsettling to the old guard. Power was supposed to be taken with blood and held with fear, not negotiated with spreadsheets and psychology. Misha, for his part, was a paradox. He thrived on the intellectual carnage, his mind, once confined by physical walls and medical routines, now unleashed on the chaotic living puzzle of the city. He found a grim satisfaction in it, but at night, in his sterile, secure apartment, the gravity of it all would crush down. He was laundering his soul to save his mother's body. The math was simple, the morality a minefield. Judge observed it all. He saw the boy's sharpness, his growing confidence, but also the shadows under his eyes. One evening, after settling a nasty little dispute over a hijacked cigarette truck, Misha's solution, a joint distribution scheme and a shared investment in a legitimate tobacco wholesaler, Judge didn't dismiss him. "Walk with me," Judge said, a phrase that always made Misha's lips quirk as he powered up his chair. They moved into the diner's back alley, a concrete canyon lit by a single buzzing sodium light. Mark followed at a discreet distance, a shadow among shadows. "You think too much," Judge stated, lighting a cigar. The smoke curled into the damp night air. "It's my job," Misha replied. "It's your weapon," Judge corrected, "but a man who only thinks forgets to feel, and feeling the streets, the fear, the greed, the desperation, that is the data no ledger can show you." He paused. "Your father felt too much. Rage, pride, it made him strong but blind. You must find a balance I never did." "Why are you telling me this?" Misha asked, looking up at the imposing figure. "Because you're not a tool anymore," Judge said, his voice low. "Tools get used and put away. You're becoming a pillar, and pillars must bear weight without cracking. Elena is improving. Jennifer tells me the prognosis is good." The mention of his mother, of the original reason for all this, hit Misha with a wave of complex emotion, relief, guilt, gratitude to the man who was both his patron and his father's killer. "Thank you." "Don't," Judge cut him off. "This isn't charity, it's an investment, and the quarterly reports are favorable." There was the faintest hint of something in his voice, not warmth, but acknowledgement. The charged chemistry in Misha's life wasn't just with power. It manifested in his growing, complicated dynamic with Stella, Jennifer's assistant. She was his tether to normalcy. She brought him case files with a roll of her eyes at the petty grievances, made sure he ate something besides diner food, and once memorably helped him rewire his apartment's thermostat when it went haywire, their fingers brushing over the circuits. It was a simple, human connection that felt more dangerous than any sit-down with gangsters. "They all look at you and see the chair first," Stella said one late night in the office, as they organized witness statements, a euphemism for coerced accounts for a racketeering case. Then they see Judge's pet. They don't see you. And what do you see? Misha asked, the question hanging in the air between them. Stella smiled, a genuine, soft thing. I see the guy who's too smart for this room, maybe too good for it too. It was a romantic notion, and it thrilled and terrified him. Could he be good here? Was there such a thing? This delicate balance was shattered when a new player arrived on the board. A corporate raider type, slick and venomous, named Roland Finch. He didn't deal in streets or shipments. He dealt in leverage, blackmail, and hostile takeovers of business interests. He'd been buying up debt from Judge's associates, acquiring failing legit fronts that were secretly used for money laundering. He was a ghost, attacking the Empire's infrastructure, not its soldiers. Judge's usual methods, muscle and menace, were useless. Finch was insulated by lawyers, shell companies, and a pristine public record. The Empire was facing an existential threat from something it didn't understand: white-collar annihilation. He's a parasite, James growled in a war council held in the diner after hours, sucking us dry through paperwork. We find him, we end him, David stated, cracking his knuckles. He lives in a penthouse with a security detail that makes the Secret Service look lazy, Jennifer reported coolly, tapping her tablet. An ending would bring a level of scrutiny we cannot afford. All eyes eventually turned to Misha, who had been silently scanning financial trails Jennifer had compiled on a laptop. He's not a parasite, Misha said quietly. He's a surgeon, and he's not sucking us dry. He's performing a hostile takeover. He doesn't want to destroy the Empire. He wants to own it, to put Judge in a box he controls. The room went cold. How do we stop him? Judge asked, his voice like gravel. Misha spent 72 hours in a feverish state, his mind merging with the digital bloodstream of Finch's operations. He saw the pattern. Finch's weakness wasn't his security, it was his arrogance. He thought in terms of assets and liabilities, of cold calculus. He didn't understand loyalty or fear or the strange, grudging respect that held Judge's world together. Misha formulated a plan. It was not a direct attack, it was a poison pill. He's acquired the debt for the Silver Slipper Club from Daniel, Misha explained, pointing at a web of connections on the screen. He's going to call it in, force a foreclosure, and take the property. It's a key laundering node. We let him. Let him, Daniel exploded. We let him, Misha repeated, his eyes glowing with strategic fire. But first we hollow it out. Jennifer, we use the Cayman route to anonymously fund a health and safety inspection charity. We report anonymously every possible code violation at the Slipper. Asbestos, faulty wiring, structural cracks. We bury the city in complaints. Then the night before the foreclosure is final, a small, contained, but very smoky electrical fire happens in the basement. Nothing major. Just enough to trigger the inspectors. He turned to Judge. Finch will take possession of a toxic, condemned, smoldering liability. The cleanup and legal fees will be 10 times the debt he paid. He'll be stuck. Meanwhile, we shift our operations from the Slipper to the new partnership venue with James, the one we created for Mercy. We lose a tooth, but we make him swallow a bomb. The plan was audacious. It required precision, timing, and a willingness to sacrifice a piece of the board. It was chess on a grand, criminal scale. Judge looked around the room at his lieutenants, James, Daniel, David, Mark, Jennifer. He saw doubt, but also a dawning understanding. This was a new kind of war. Do it, Judge said. The operation was a thing of dark beauty. The fake violations were filed. The charity was a masterpiece of obscurity. Paul, with his talent for electronics, handled the smoky fire with the care of a bomb disposal expert. Finch took possession of the Silver Slipper and immediately found himself mired in millions of dollars of unexpected liability and a city government suddenly very interested in his new property. His elegant takeover was bogged down in a quagmire of his own making. The victory was quiet but profound. It proved the Empire could adapt, could fight on this new, cerebral battlefield. Misha's stature skyrocketed. He was no longer just an apprentice. He was the architect of a crucial defense. But victory attracted attention. Roland Finch, humiliated and financially strung, didn't send goons. He dug deeper. He finally uncovered the identity of the brain. He found the birth certificate of Misha Volkov, and he found the death certificate of Leonid Volkov. The connection to Judge was a historical footnote, but the present connection was explosive. Finch's move was subtle and brutal. He didn't attack Misha. He sent a dossier not to Judge, but to Misha's mother, Elena, now convalescing in a private facility. It contained carefully curated truths, images of Judge, news clippings about his criminal empire, a highlighted record of Leonid Volkov's murder, and photos of her son, Misha, entering and leaving the diner, sitting in the booth, looking every inch a part of that world. The call from the head nurse came to Misha in the middle of a dispute over stolen casino chips. Elena had suffered a severe hypertensive crisis after receiving a delivery of get-well papers. She was stable but fragile. Misha's world collapsed. He raced to the clinic, his heart a drum of terror. He found his mother pale, her eyes wide with a horror that had nothing to do with her illness. "Misha," she whispered, her hand trembling as she reached for him. "The papers, that man, is it true? Are you working for him, for the man who killed your father?" The lie died in his throat. He couldn't do it, not to her, not with the evidence staring back at her from the floor where she'd dropped it. He took her hand, tears of shame and fury blurring his vision. "I did it for you, Mama, for the treatment." The heartbreak on her face was a worse punishment than anything Finch could have devised. "I would rather have died," she said, the words barely audible, but they struck him like physical blows. "I would rather have died than have you sell your soul to that devil." It was the lowest point. Judge found him later, in the alley behind the diner, staring blankly at the brick wall, his chair motionless. "Finch," Misha said, "the name a curse." "I know," Judge replied. "Jennifer traced it. It was a good move. He attacked your center of gravity, not your body, your heart." "She said she'd rather have died," Misha choked out, the emotion raw and tearing. Judge was silent for a long time. A mother's love is a fierce thing. It can forgive many things, but it must have truth to rebuild on. He crouched down, an astonishing gesture for a man of his power, bringing himself to Misha's eye level. The sodium light etched the deep lines of his face. "You came to me out of love for her. You have worked for me to protect her. That is not a devil's bargain. That is a son's sacrifice. But the path has changed you. It has given you power. The question is not whether your soul is sold. The question is what you will build with the power you've bought." He stood. "Finch thinks he has broken you. He thinks he has created a weakness between us. He will try to exploit it. He will likely try to contact you, to flip you, to use your grief and anger against me." "What do I do?" Misha asked, his voice hollow. "What you do best," Judge said. "Think and feel, then act." The offer came 2 days later, as Judge predicted. A burner phone delivered to Misha's apartment. A single text from an unknown number. "A son should not serve his father's murderer. We can free you, and your mother, meet me." It was the play. Finch wanted to turn Judge's greatest asset into his ultimate weapon. Misha told Judge everything. They formulated a counterplay. It was time to stop defending and go on the offensive. The meeting was set in a public place, the atrium of the city's art museum. Misha wheeled himself in, feeling exposed. Finch approached, looking like any other wealthy patron. He smiled, a thin, reptilian thing. "Misha, a tragic story. Your father a king, your mother a victim, and you a prisoner. Judge has used you brilliantly, but he will discard you, or worse, when you know too much." He made a subtle gesture. "Come work for me. Real power, clean power. We can legitimize everything. And your mother can live in peace without the stench of that diner near her family." Misha listened, letting Finch talk, letting him paint his picture of liberation. He then did something Finch did not expect. He laughed. It was a dry, tired sound. "You don't get it, Finch. You think this is about crime and legitimacy. It's not. It's about order. Judge's order is brutal, but it's honest. Your order is a lie. You'd wrap the same violence in corporate bylaws and shareholder reports. You didn't attack Judge because he's a criminal. You attacked him because he controls something you want. You're just a thief in a better suit." Finch's smile vanished. "Then you choose to be a slave." "No," Misha said. "I choose my family." And he, Misha nodded slightly towards a balcony where Mark stood, casually observing a sculpture. Is my family now too? You made a mistake. You hurt my mother. That wasn't business. That was personal. As Finch's eyes widened, Misha gave the signal. Jennifer, from her office miles away, initiated the final phase of Misha's plan. While Finch was here, trying to recruit Misha, a torrent of the truly dirty, hidden financial data Misha had compiled on Finch, the evidence of his earlier violent acquisitions, his ties to offshore funds used by warlords, his own secret sins, was being delivered simultaneously to the district attorney's office, the IRS, and Finch's biggest legitimate corporate rivals. The poison pill wasn't for a building this time. It was for Finch's entire life. "You're finished, Finch," Misha said softly. "Your house of cards just caught fire. The authorities and your competitors have everything. You'll be too busy fighting for your own freedom to ever bother us again." Finch's face went from pale to purple with rage. He took a step forward, but Mark was suddenly there, a solid wall of menace between them. The message was clear. The fallout was swift and public. Roland Finch was arrested on a spectacular array of charges before the week was out. His empire crumbled into dust and headlines. The victory party at the diner was raucous. Even Elena, after a long, painful conversation with Misha and a shocking, quiet visit from Judge himself, the details of which Misha would never know, sent her reluctant blessing. The bridge was damaged, not burned. Healing could begin. In the quiet after the celebration, Judge and Misha sat in the booth once more. It was just the two of them. "You saved the empire," Judge said, pushing a glass of expensive bourbon towards Misha. "Not with a gun, with your mind and your heart." "I protected my family," Misha corrected, taking the glass. "The empire was part of the deal." Judge nodded. "That's how it always starts." He took a drink. "I am an old man, Misha. This city, it's getting new kinds of monsters. I can handle the wolves. You handled the snake. The future will have more snakes." Misha understood what wasn't being said. The apprenticeship was over. The transition, slow and unspoken, had begun. "I don't know if I want your chair," Misha said honestly. "I'm not giving it to you," Judge grunted, "but I am building a new one, next to mine, for a different kind of judge, one who understands both the street and the spreadsheet, one who can see a third path." He looked at Misha, and the granite in his face seemed to soften at the edges. The boy who asked to share a table, he earned a seat at the head of it. Misha looked out the diner window at the city, his city now, a place of terrible beauty and brutal logic. He had entered this world for love, stayed for the challenge, and now he might shape it. He wasn't a prisoner. He wasn't just his father's son, or his mother's savior, or Judge's weapon. He was Misha, and the unbelievable move that started with a simple question had rewritten the rules of the Underworld forever. Thank you for listening. Misha rewrote the rules of power from a wheelchair, but what would you have done in his place? If you were tested like that, would you rise or fall? Let me know your thoughts and where you're watching from. Subscribe for more stories where the weakest become the strongest.